The era of Pikmin was a magical time. The 9-year wait after Pikmin 2 was admittedly very grueling, however the speculation and excitement that brewed in the final 2 years up to its release were truly magical. The game looked fantastic, redesigned and polished for a much more powerful system. It introduced a much larger story with 3, possibly 4 entirely new playable characters, and expanded more about the Pikmin species and the creatures they must face. And once the game was out, there was so much to take in and enjoy. Most everyone enjoyed their time playing through Pikmin 3 after so much time without new Pikmin content. And then, as time passed, revelations started popping up. The potential of Pikmin 3 was expanded more, and what was given felt a little stilted? In comparison to Pikmin 1 and 2, Pikmin 3 felt a little shy. Now don't get me wrong, I adore Pikmin 3, but at the same time, here's some things I noticed looking back on the Wii U Classic. Here's everything wrong with Pikmin 3. This is not in any particular order, but number 1 is there is no Picklerpedia. Now to be fair, in the first Pikmin game, Picklerpedia was not so much an established thing, but even though it didn't become a full-blown extra bonus content that came with the Pikmin 2 game, you could at least find out small little trivia notes about each of the creatures at the end of the game through a creature montage that takes place during the credits. In Pikmin 2, this of course did expand to a full-blown gallery of all of the creatures and treasures you could find, and with it you would find all the different, much more detailed notes of Olimar as well as the ship and Louis, fully expanding the already gigantic world of Pikmin 2. In Pikmin 3, there's nothing. The closest you get is locking onto a creature and finding out the name that it has. Now admittedly you do have notes on each of the individual fruits, and there is a nice amount of dialogue between how the different characters react to the fruits, but even then it's not that each character gives you a specific perception, saying that Alf tells you the adventure, Brittany tells you the taste, and Charlie tells you how great he is. It's simply one note given from Brittany, but sometimes with other people involved. It's much more amputated, as is going to be the theme for this whole video. There is way less detail in Pikmin 3 for all the things you can find, and after seeing the previous examples of how this was approached, it's kinda disappointing. Number 2, there is no night sequence. Now, to be fair, this is very much an idealized idea for Pikmin, but at the same time, many fans were speculating for this idea for the longest of time. Unfortunately, Pikmin does like to stay in quite an archaic form, so it's likely going to stay to that style of never actually showing us a nighttime scene, because it just kind of breaks the gameplay. But admittedly, it was a little disappointing for fans. It may be one of the weaker points on this list, but it's something worth noting anyway. Number 3, and a bit more impactful, there are no purples and whites in the story mode. This just seemed like a kick in the balls. After hearing that the Pikmin games always seem to expand on new Pikmin, with 3.5 in the first game and 5.5 in the second, you would at least expect to find some of the older Pikmin with some new Pikmin introduced, and this is kind of what happened. We did get the original 3, and we got 2 whole new Pikmin types revealed before the game came out, but their inclusion came with the amputation of the purples and whites. Now admittedly they do work quite similarly to the new rock and winged Pikmin, but even still it would have been nice to find some way to incorporate them somehow, even if it was simply a side cave section where they could actually sprout from. It makes sense logically why they don't appear as well, since the captains never actually go into the underground sections of the world, but even still, having 5 Pikmin in the last game and then showing up with another 5 in your roster with 2 disappearing, it's just hard to get over. Now admittedly they were in the mission mode, and that's fun in its own way, but seeing them incorporated as a giant roster for your story would have really bumped the game up more. Number 4 comes from the environmental designs. Although it's a bit of a lenient way of describing them all, most of the areas are kinda just the same. And what I mean by that is there's a lot less variety in environments that we've seen in the past. Kind of. The description I've got here is that they're all just gardens. Everything's so sort of naturistically playgroundish. The Garden of Hope is obviously the most obvious one, considering it is actually kind of a garden. You've got the plant pots everywhere and all that jazz, but at the same time, this little gimmick is something that appears everywhere else. Sure, you've got that giant pot in the middle of the Garden of Hope's river, but at the same time, that kind of asset appears at the beginning of the tropical wilds. There's another pot plant, which is the very first shards you use to build a bridge. And while there is a little bit of variety in the actual environments that kind of follow them, and by that I mean more of like the elements, like we've got more of a beachy feel in one area, a giant body of water and just iciness around, it still just kind of feels like the same path assets with different textures on them. I don't really know a better way to describe it, but there's a lot more of the same kind of gimmicks. It's quite a flat world. Perhaps simply just introducing more verticality or more realistic hills or something that makes it feel less like just paths with different things scattered as the decoration on the sides. I don't know how else to explain it. Oh well. Number 5 as a bigger, more prominent point for the issues of Pikmin 3, it's too short. It is abysmally short. Now to be fair, Pikmin 1 was only 4 hours long, or at least when I play the game it comes to being about 4 hours. Pikmin 2, though, expanded this massively. That was a full-on 20-30 hour game just because of its admittedly broken time-freezing mechanic. Pikmin 3 goes back to the Pikmin 1 style. It expands a little bit from what it can do. I mean, actually, it does expand a lot, but even still, compared to Pikmin 2, there's just nothing to do. Everything goes by so quickly, especially since such a giant portion of the game is optional. You can get to the end in 7 days. That's probably not actually accurate, it's probably like 9, but even still, that's always going to be the case with speedrunners, but the fact that there's such a giant amount of the game that you just kind of end up at immediately, it's yeah. Now admittedly the mission modes and all that fun stuff do expand the gameplay quite a lot. Playing all of them and trying to get platinum does pad out your gameplay a good amount. But we would have rather seen that, I feel, in story mode, I think. I think people generally like a longer story over just longer gameplay. Especially because the mission mode nature can also again be played one game over. With one playthrough each. Depends how you play the game, I guess. Either way, most people did say it was just too short. Number 6, and this point actually seems like it would link to an earlier point, but as I said, this list is completely shuffled, so we'll just go with it. There are only 2 new Pikmin. I admittedly was kinda disappointed. Sure, I'm the Pikmin fanboy that expected way too much of Pikmin 3, but even so, every single Pikmin game seemed to throw a spanner in the works somewhere. The Puffstool Pikmin seemed like a nice, cool little side thing for Pikmin 1. Obviously, the Bulbmin blew everybody's mind. But Pikmin 3 revealed the Pikmin and then showed us nothing else. I was dead set expecting a third Pikmin type to make an appearance in some form, even if it was for a minimalized section of the game that wasn't gonna stick around in any form but was just gonna be a surprise. But it wasn't. The Rock Pikmin were introduced immediately, the Wing Pikmin admittedly were hinted at, which was quite fun, but then they got their own trailer and then the game came out. So then when you saw the new Pikmin, you're like, oh, it's them, I saw them in the trailer. Seems to be a running theme with the media these days. Oh well. Number 7 is the non-expansive new creatures. For a start, there aren't many new creatures. Again, making the giant comparison to Pikmin 2, that game had bloody millions of creatures. I remember I listed the number once, I have since forgotten, but either way, that game had tons and tons of enemies, and even more importantly, it expanded on the enemies that were in the previous game. Something as simple as the iridescent flint beetle also got an iridescent glint beetle brother, or cousin. basically taking the species and expanding it more. We've seen this with every single game in the form of the Bulborbs, but even if you think from that kind of perspective, Pikmin 1 gave us the spotted Bulborbs and the Bulbears, but then Pikmin 2 gave us the now named red Bulborbs and Bulbears, along with orange Bulborbs, hairy Bulborbs, fiery Bulblaxes if you want to count that, all sorts of different dynamics of the Bulborb and multiple versions. Pikmin 3 gave us the Whip-Tongue Bulborb. That's fun, yeah. That's it. And even going on with all the other creatures, sure, some got some drastic redesigns, but it didn't really expand very much. There was a bug that got a flying incarnation, and that was quite fun, but even still, it didn't expand very much. It barely expanded at all, and in fact, in doing so, it, in more cases than not, replaced the old versions. The creatures in Pikmin 3 are, again, an amputation of the giant gallery that we had for Pikmin 2. Most of the Pikmin 2 creatures just don't appear, and sometimes they'll get a cousin replacing them, but not in a lot of cases. It's really annoying as well, because I associate Pikmin as this crazy foreign world, yet I guess we just went somewhere with a lack of population or something. They didn't expand the creatures very much, they didn't give us many new creatures anyway. Or just creatures full stop. Number 8, we're only collecting fruit. Bit of a weird thing to say, but Pikmin 2, we already collected fruit. I think it's kind of, I guess, a bit of a thing where they couldn't really get around it, but Pikmin 2 had you collecting all sorts of crap. That was the point, you're collecting treasure, anything that seems valuable, you get. But having Pikmin 3 just take a section of that seems a little bit shy. I want to say cheap, but cheap's not really the word I'm going for. It's just a bit anticlimactic, I guess is the word I'm saying. Now, of course, from a story perspective, it makes sense they're searching for food, and I guess they really wanted to specify that vegetables are not a thing that Copiates eat. But even still, it's just not as fun. Part of the intrigue of Pikmin 2 was searching for treasure to find out what you would find next. There was a weird explorative curiosity that came with finding all these random things that you might or might not recognize. With fruit, I don't care where the pear is, you know? I don't need to know, I'm not invested in the kiwis. On top of that, fruits are duplicated in the game. So it's not even a matter of they can't keep up with the 201 treasures in the last game, but even when you've got the whole category of fruits, they have to duplicate the fruits to fill in the slots. You collect multiple kiwis and multiple oranges with swellings on the top. I don't know my fruits, I'm not very healthy. But what I'm saying is, it's a far less appealing item to be collecting. Even ship parts makes more sense, and you want to like see it attached to your ship. That's a nice extra sense to it. But fruit, there is no real extra incentive other than more time to play, which is just a sucky gameplay anyway. It didn't really work, it didn't feel very intense, felt too easy. That's another point for later. But yeah, there you go. Number 9, the boss battles were wasted. I found when I was playing Pikmin 3 that I just kinda blasted through it, not really thinking about each individual step. And by that I mean, the bosses never felt like a big end. When you were playing the caves in Pikmin 2, you got to the end of the cave and found a boss that was your final thing that would give you a really good treasure. Makes sense. In Pikmin 1, the bosses were dedicated area stuff that would, that were actually defending a real important piece of ship that you want to collect. Makes sense. But in this game, the bosses are kind of taking the Luigi's Mansion 2 approach, in that they're just in your way. They don't feel like a climax to the area, they're just in the area. You could very easily go away from them and do something else. There isn't a matter of them feeling very important. They just have the signal that you're constantly chasing after. It would be nice if they were locked away for the whole of the area and it wasn't until you were done that they became unlocked. And I guess that is kind of the format that they have, but you don't have to do a lot of exploring for them to become accessible, you know? You just need to build one bridge in this one place, and then it's like, oh, well, you've opened the path now, off you go. And then when you fight the boss, you realize, oh, it wasn't that worth it anyway. It doesn't have the thing that we want, or it does, and it's not what we expect. It just doesn't feel impactful in any way. The final boss felt like the biggest one, but even then, I didn't even realize it was the final boss. Maybe because I'm an idiot, maybe because I thought I saw spoilers when I didn't, but even still, I was expecting the story to go beyond just saving Onima. I thought it would be that he would join our team and we'd finish one final area with the 4 of us. But no, it was just, collect him, great, off you go. Oh, were you collecting fruit on the way? Sorry, you tried to prioritize a living person over all the food. I don't know, man. Everything feels wasted. Number 10, another big one that everyone's pointed out. There is no online. Why? It's been a point that Nintendo has said that they can't have multiple crowds of 100 Pikmin. The Wii U just wouldn't be able to handle it. But then fine, make it so there's 100 Pikmin full stop, or only 50 Pikmin. It doesn't matter. With the style of Bingo Battle and the challenge modes, online could work easily. It's a small area dedicated with a small amount of Pikmin. Even if you made it so that the Bingo Battle Pikmin were limited, you had to start with 5, you could only have 30 each. It would still be enjoyable to just have some interaction. I know the games are all about feeling so alone on a planet. I guess it's not really though, actually. Sure, you're the last humanoid thing, but you've got all these friends in Pikmin form. So you shouldn't really be feeling alone when you play the games, but there's no online, so you have to feel alone at some point. It is actually a poorly paced game, and I never actually realised it at first, which may instead provide that the games aren't actually poorly paced, but I found out that over 25% of the treasures, no, I think it was worse than that, it might have been more than half of the treasures, the fruit in this game require blues, and you don't get blues until last, which is fine on its own. But once you've gotten the blues, you will be fighting the boss right before the final boss. Assuming you actually beat the boss with the ones that need the blues, the ones that are associated with getting the blues, that one, if you defeat it, say you've done that, right? I've phrased this terribly poorly, do excuse me. When you go out into the main menu or the map screen, by that point, you are taken to the final area. And they say, do you want to go here now, or do you actually want to play the game? And so naturally, you play the game. But if more than half of the game is only available when the game is telling you, hey, go to the final boss now, that's poorly paced. That is terribly paced. Maybe if one more area was in between, just to say, here's another thing you can do now that you've got all the Pikmin, then go to the final boss, that would make sense. Doesn't happen in Pikmin 3. Sucks. Number 12, and maybe this is more of a personal and kind of stretchy thing, there's no more marching, which is, admittedly, kind of less fun. I don't know, I guess it comes to opinion. Marching was replaced by the swarming mechanic, which is fun in its own right, but it'd be nice to have a little bit more control over the Pikmin. But maybe that's what caused so many of the AI issues in Pikmin 2, considering how they seem to die and everything. And I must admit, the Pikmin 3 AI is much better. They follow their own paths, possibly because you're not actually moving them individually. But even so, it would be nice to just have more control. But I guess there's only so many buttons on a controller, so this is kind of a weak point. But I thought I'd mention it because many people have been disappointed. Or even if there was an option to switch, so you could remove the swarm ability and replace it with the old style marching. Maybe not. Oh well. Doesn't matter. Number 13. The game focuses on looks and not depth. The game is flat when it comes to depth. There is no giant moral beyond telling a 5-year-old to pay attention and communicate well and be a team. But even then, I'm not even asking for a deep story. I just want one that feels less boring. and this is going to come into a point later on that I might as well just combine now, very formulaic characters. If you've heard any of the conversations between Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, you know all of them. You know, Alf is focused on the adventure, on the Pikmin. He's in the know, he wants to get on with the mission at hand. Brittany's in her own kind of bubble, she likes eating food, she's a bit rude in that sense, she hates Charlie. Fun, fun, fun. Charlie loves Brittany. There you go, that is the entire description of all the the characters you need to know. Everything they say, it always goes back to those same points, which is fine to a degree, but nothing goes beyond it. It's just a way of understanding characters easily. Maybe it's because there's 3 of them, so they don't want to confuse their audience, but compare that, please, to Olimar, or even Louie. In Pikmin 1, Olimar had such deep philosophical thoughts in his notes. He didn't speak out loud, but at least you got to hear it through that. In Pikmin 2, although you couldn't really hear it as much in gameplay, you got to find out more from how other people that were connected to them spoke to them, but also you saw it in the notes that were in the Picklerpedia. God damn it, RIP. It's just disappointed to go to a game that suddenly doubles the amount of playable characters that you've been able to experience up to this point, and have all of them one-dimensional. Oh, there's no development, there's nothing. They're just a sheet of paper waddling through the game. It's fine, they're only going to be there for a few hours anyway. And focusing on looks, yeah, it seemed like it was very much trying to push to sell the Wii U, but in doing so, it's just like, it's nice, but I would have preferred my depth. And on top of that, even then, the marketing kinda lied. The quality of the images before release were better than the actual game. Maybe something did come up and they had to buff it down. Maybe it was having actual rendering issues, or maybe it was just a way to market it to make it seem prettier than it actually was, as is also a thing with the media these days. I don't know, but it's a shame, you know? I don't know. Number 14, the fruit names. They're fine. They're reused. Some of them from Pikmin 2 are identical, which actually kind of doesn't make sense. The whole point of Pikmin 2's names were they were created by the ship to market them. Why would the SS Drake suddenly have the exact same name choice for them? For a start, that doesn't make very much sense. Secondly, it's kind of boring. Even if they just chose to give them a different fruit name, I would be more interested, because it'd be like, there's 2 different opinions of what they got from the same item. Maybe I could make a theory thought on that. Drake is actually more sentient because he thought this than the ship. Who would win in a fight? I don't know. Bring out your betting hammers. I don't know. What I'm saying is, it's boring. The fruit names are boring for the most part. And if they're reused, then they're not fun. If you're gonna take your older brother's arm off, but you decide to name your son after his thumb, this is a terrible metaphor, but even so, it sucks, is what I'm trying to say. Just don't do it, you know? Just no. Be original. Do more. Please. The story itself is also bland. It doesn't really go anywhere. You're out of food, go get food. You go gotten food. Oh, there's a signal. Let's follow it. Again, and then again, and then again, and then again. All our problems are solved. Yay, let's go home. That's kind of it. It's a game of cat and mouse. You're just chasing a signal, which is boring. Pikmin 2's story, although admittedly wasn't much more, it was, we're out of money, go get money. At least you're not following a signal to direct you. It was just expand and succeed. I guess that's less story and should be even worse. But even then, actually, the twist was that you lose one of your characters and you gotta go find him. Still no signal, it's just exploring. It's a lot more to take away from the simplistic, you know? You get to put your own feet into the shoes of the characters. But just having a signal that you're following, like a cat with a laser beam, doesn't do anything for me. Especially because, like, Louie just... Like, when Louie appears, that seemed interesting, but it doesn't really go anywhere. He just appears, then he goes again. And it's like, wow, we'll keep following. I don't know what I wanted, but I didn't want that. I guess that was them trying to add more to the story, but in doing so, they took everything away. I don't know. The mini-stories, though, with how the Plasm Wraith has a thing for Olimar, that's quite cool. But the fact that Louie exists, that's quite cool. Everything else, do not care. I actually thought the story was going to be really good when Brittany fell out the second time of the ship. I was like, this could go somewhere. It didn't. There are only 5 areas. Again, this is a running theme in the Pikmin games, and I guess that's just the set down. But it's just boring. I wanted more. I wanted one more. I don't know. Am I wrong for saying that? I don't know. I just, knowing that this has been a 9-year wait, and there was so much new things they could have done. There was so many new Pikmin they could have incorporated, swapped around, used elements for, and created hazards and areas for. To have only 5, and even then have the 5th one just be a linear path you kind of just go along for the most part, is just... It's the standard. It's what was fine for the GameCube game in 2001. I just figured it wasn't enough for the Wii U game in 2013. Am I that much in the wrong? Second to last point is 3 characters, not 3 players. Why? Whose idea was that? That seems like a giant logical jump or leap or drop, I guess is the better word. It would be amazing to have a 3-player Pikmin 3 story mode. Literally have it so that Alf, Brittany and Charlie are on their own adventures. Again, this would only be probably possible with online, considering the Wii U's controls and all that, but even still, what an amazing thing that could have been. Literally having cooperative 3-player workings, or even just in mission mode. Why is it only 2-player when you can play as 3 characters? It's just, oh, how did you miss that mark? That was such a good idea. I sound like a whining goat. Oh well. Final point, I've been rambling long enough. That is, the best part of the story is locked behind obscure codes online. It's just hidden. Why would you do that? It's nice that there were hidden codes around the area. There was no indication of where they were, you just gotta go and explore them. That was fun. But you had to go onto a website to unlock it. What would have been way better is if collecting the codes made the video appear on your copad. Just let us watch the goddamn thing. Because no one's going to go to your website anymore. Everyone's going to go to YouTube. Which is fine by me. I kind of live here now. But at the same time, why would you do that? That would have been so much more interesting. Plus, that was literally the most interesting part. Seeing what Oliver and Louis were doing behind the scenes. Getting their perspective. See what Louis has to say. Even then, the Louis one was unofficial. That one you had to break into to get. Why would you leave the most important parts out? It just blows my mind how they could have dropped the ball that hard. And it is probably one of the most disappointing things if we didn't have such all-access abilities and information like we do with the internet now. If this was 20 years old, this game... Oh God, everyone would have been blown away, actually. But the fact that the code is hidden online would have also actually been kind of normal. But still... Why would you do that? That is one of the worst things that is wrong with the Pikmin 3. Oh well. But on the other hand, mission mode is bloody brilliant. Pikmin 3 could have been a real super masterpiece. On its own, it's pretty darn good. But looking at the bigger Pikmin picture, Pikmin 3 really could have been better. It never could have lived up to our expectations. But at the same time, in a lot of ways, it really dropped the ball in a lot of places. After waiting for all of those 9 years for the next installment, what we got was a superbly polished yet somewhat amputated addition to our favourite Nintendo game franchise. But I won't ramble at you any longer. Here's hoping Pikmin 4 can fill in the gaps, where Pikmin 3 gaped. I'll see you in another 9 years. Though actually, it's already been 5, so I guess I'll see you in 4. Unless we count Hey Pikmin. Shoot. However, the speculation and excitement... Most everyone enjoyed their time. You will do... Perception saying that... You would expect to find at least... Can't really Forest of... The garden, you've got the plotted parts. You've got the plotted part. You've got the plotted part. Sure, you've got a giant plot. Sure, you've got a giant pot within the river of the Garden of Hope still. Sure, you've still got that giant pot in the middle of garden, which is the very first thing you knew, which is the very first amount of shut around. It's still also got an iridescent glint. I've forgotten that one's name. What is its name? I was just... Excuse you, phone. You know, sorry, you tried to prioritize a lot. Sorry, you tried to... Why is the entire thing behind... You know what? Maybe it was not. Excuse that last note.